Well, hi again, Mr. Bleeker here. What we're going to focus in on in this lesson is blood types. Now, you might have heard of blood type A, you might have heard of type B, some people are AB, and some people have blood type O. And you might have heard that some people are A negative or A positive, O positive, O negative, B positive, B negative, and then there's a super rare one out there called AB negative. Okay, there's a lot about these blood types that you need to know about. So this lesson is going to be short and sweet. We'll get right to it. We'll not only talk about the ABO system, but we'll really clear up what's up with that whole plus minus thing. So here we go. When we were up at the University of Northern BC, I remember they were showing this very graphic, and I remember saying to myself at gene school, it would have been great if I'd had a chance to do the cardiovascular system before we came up for this genetics exercise. Well, I'll make up for it now, and maybe in the future. We'll see how that goes. We'll see if we get this lesson done before we go up again next time. But the ABO blood type system is all about markers, these little markers that are on the surfaces of our cells. Now, these little markers, some of them basically indicate us inside of our bodies. They're markers for our own tissues, and of course, our own tissues should belong. But in the case of blood cells, you have specific antigens, okay? And these little markers are sort of different classifications. Now, if you're type A, you have the A type antigen presented on the surface of your red blood cells, on your erythrocytes. If you are type B, you have B antigens sticking off the surface of your red blood cells. And if you're type AB, well, you have both. Type O has nothing. It's basically nude. It's naked. There's no surface antigens on there at all. But we'll talk about plus minus in a minute. That's a different matter. Now, I remember watching Bram Stoker's Dracula, and poor Mina there got a blood transfusion because she was obviously afflicted. She'd been bitten by a vampire, and they were infusing blood into her. That's a very dangerous pursuit. You can't just put anybody's blood into anybody. Here's the case in point. Type A blood does not mix with type B blood. If you put type B blood, for example, I'm A negative, if you put B blood into me, my white blood cells would attack it and they would form a blood clot. And that's not really something I want in my circulatory system. A blood clot can cause, basically, can cause a blockage. It's as bad as getting an air bubble in your blood vessels. It could just lead to your heart stopping. Not good. So type A blood is on the lookout for type B, and it will produce antibodies against type B and form a clot. So you can't have type B blood. Here's another fact. If someone's type B blood, you can't have an organ transplant from them. So not only can type A people only really take type A blood, they really can't take tissue from somebody that isn't type A. We'll get more into that later. Type B is on guard against type A. It will produce antibodies. So if you gave my blood to somebody who was type B, the same thing would happen. It would cause a clot, and that's not good for anybody. And then there's this neat hybrid over here. This is blood type AB. It's kind of got the best of both worlds. It's got the A antigens on the surface of the cell, these markers. It's got the B antigens. And this doesn't have a problem with anybody. It's a hybrid. It's good with type A blood. It's good with type B blood. It's familiar. It doesn't react against it. So it doesn't produce any antibodies really to anything. And I'll talk about why that's an advantage in just a moment. Type O blood doesn't have anything on the surface. There's no A markers, there's no B markers. So you cannot put type A blood or type B blood into somebody who's type O. Again, that's just off limits. The body will reject it. It'll look at the surface and say, I don't know you, and I reject you, and the white blood cells will attack it and form a clot. But there's a lot of people in society that are type O. That's a very common blood type. Um, Type B and type A, a little less common, still more prevalent. And then there's this AB, which is a lot more rare. Now, here's the neat thing. When you think about if you're needing blood, then somebody who's type A will need blood from somebody who's type A. And type B, they'll have to get type B donors. Well, you're in the driver's seat if you're type A or type B, because now you can get blood from anybody because you don't produce antibodies. You don't freak out about blood types. So if somebody were type AB, they could take my blood. If somebody were type B and they needed blood from a friend of mine who's type B, it's all good. They could get a transfusion from that person. If they need blood and I've got another buddy who's type O, well, AB does not freak out about type O blood. Here's a way to think about it. There's nothing on here to react to as far as the ABO system goes. So it's fine. Type AB is what we call, and you have to know this is the universal receiver because you can receive just about any kind of blood, which is great, right? If you're injured for receiving units of blood, you've got basically all the options. Type O blood, the good thing for people that are type O is there's a lot of other people that are type O as well. That's a really common blood type. So if you went into the basically if you went into the cooler to get a units of blood, you'll find that there's lots of this because a lot of the population is like this. So it's nice because there's enough type O on hand, is what I'm saying. This is the universal donor blood. You can give that to anybody. You see, if you put this into type A's, there's nothing to notice. Notice it doesn't worry about O. And B, well, it's not going to worry about this either because there's nothing to worry about. Because type B is really watching for this. You can put this into a type AB person because type AB is apparently chilling and it's not worried about very much. It doesn't react to anything. And you can give type O to anybody else who's type O. So this is known as the universal donor, and you're in the catbird seat if you're AB, you're the universal receiver. So there you go. That's the ABO blood type system. I didn't quite go over this, so I should. You receive two genes as far as your blood type from your parent. If you're type A, you could have gotten one form of your gene, known as your allele. You could be type A from mom, and you could also be type A from dad. Now, if you were type A from mom or dad, we'll say this is dad, even if you got a gene for type O, well, type O doesn't count. It doesn't present anything. So you're functionally, or basically your genes will express the type A blood type. So genetically, your genotype could be this, but your phenotype or your physical expression of your genotype, you present as A. And it's the same thing with B. You could be what's called homozygous, or having the same genes. No, fancy sounding word, right? Comes from the word homo meaning same and zygos basically meaning genetics. So this is, if you see this is like a purebred. It has both of the B genes, so it's just presenting B. If somebody is a hybrid, and let's say they got type O from mom, well, there's nothing to present for type O. This gene here is going to present the B antigen, so you look like type B. That's because you are. So phenotypically, these are both presenting physically as the B type blood cell. And in this case, well, you got one. This would be where, let's say, for example, you got the A gene from one parent and the B from the other. This is the only way it comes together. So you're both. This gene is expressing, and so is this. There you go. So you are a hybrid. And here, you got the type O gene, and the only way you're type O blood is if you got O from mom and O from dad. That's the only way. Otherwise, you're that or that. So this type O is a purebred blood type. Cool. Moving on. Then, let's zoom in on this. Then there's this Rhesus antigen. Now, this was discovered when they were working with the Rhesus monkey, and it's not as simple as ABO blood types, folks. There's a lot more to it. There's the Rhesus antigen. So instead of saying Rhesus all the time, they just use the first two letters. It's spelled RHESUS. This is a pretty simple blood marker. Okay, ABO is one thing. Now there's several more, but this one's another major one. It identifies you as having this marker or not having this marker. Okay, so I'm A negative blood. How do I know that? Because when I went to the Canadian Blood Services and signed up to give blood, you could do that about every 56 days. So help out, folks, if you can. I am type A blood, so I have the little A markers on the surface of my cells, but I don't present the Rhesus antigen. So I don't have these at all. So I'm just a good old A minus. It makes me an A minus. So that's a letter grade too, but no. Um, this basically just means I present the A antigens only. I don't present this. Now in the population, this is the most common. If you go to get a unit of blood, you'll see lots of positive bags. You'll see the B positives and the O positives and the A positives. If you want to talk rare, you want to talk like it's point, I think it's 0.02% of the population. It's very low, quoting off the top of my head here. If you're type AB, that's pretty rare. And if you're type AB negative, holy smokes, are you ever rare? That's an extremely rare blood type. You're like one in thousands of thousands. It doesn't come up very often. But anyways, that's the Rhesus antigen. You either have it or you don't. And you really shouldn't miss the discussion of this. When mothers get pregnant, you'll go in and you'll get, there's a shot you'll get. And sometimes doctors explain it, sometimes they don't. There's when you become pregnant, the baby's in the womb, the baby may not have your blood type. Now, mothers and babies don't share blood, but this is the placenta right here, and it's embedded in the upper portion of the uterus. That's you can see the umbilical cord here, and there it is. Now, the first time you get pregnant, let's say that mom doesn't have the Rhesus antigen. So let's say, for example, she's like me, A negative blood, but we're only going to look at the negative part. Well, as far as the blood goes, she presents negatively, and if the baby has Rh positive blood, the mother's immune system, which is in close contact with the baby's, the mother's immune system can mount and a basic can overreact, and it detects this antigen sort of near its bloodstream, and it'll send antibodies down there, and that's not good for the baby. So the first time a person gets pregnant, it's sort of like the mother's body it'll become aware of the fact that, hey, there's something growing inside me that had the Rhesus antigen. And the problem is, the next time the mother becomes pregnant, if her second child is Rh positive, she's already got antibodies present in her blood that are aware of this issue. And her body may mass an immune attack on the child, and this can create all sorts of problems in related to fertility. It can complicate the pregnancy. It's not good. The good news is, when a mother becomes pregnant, there's a shot for this, which is kind of like an immunosuppressant, and it prevents this issue from being a big deal. I remember when my wife and I, when she became pregnant the first time, it's almost standard. You go in to see your doctor, and you get the shot, and it's just sort of like preventative maintenance. So I want to make sure it's not an issue. Okay. Well, that's basically it, folks. I can hear my dog barking in the background, so I better finish. Have a good one, and that's it for blood types. Ciao.